So the last key to unlocking the Bard is gravy. I call it gravy because it's all the juicy stuff that we haven't dealt with. We've dealt with thought, action. We've dealt with imagery, and we've dealt with rhythm, or the meter. But now it's just all of the extra stuff, all of the rhetorical devices, all of the poetic devices that Shakespeare uses to make his language that much richer. Okay, and I'm going to point out a couple and then kind of leave you to your own as you explore any piece of his text, that you can kind of find your own little juicy tidbits of poetosity. Okay, we'll call it that. All right, poetosity. We just made up a word. Shakespeare was famous for doing that. So the first one I want to point out is a rhetorical device. It's used often in constructing arguments. And we talked about the fact that Shakespeare likes to construct arguments in a lot of his scenes, okay? Antithesis means that he sets up two words or two ideas in opposition to each other to clarify a thought, okay? The most famous example is, can you guess? To be or not to be. Two ideas that are antithetical to each other, opposite to each other. To be or not to be? That's the question. Okay, so we have an antithesis, and it clarifies exactly what the question is that Hamlet is asking: to be or not to be. Okay, there's some other examples of that, and we see some in the Romeo and Juliet. So we have, but soft, but light through yonder window breaks. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Already we have this piece of antithesis that helps us understand what Romeo is thinking. It is the east, and Juliet is the sun. Well, we're almost there. Arise, fair sun. So we have this idea of the sun having risen. Arise, fair sun, and kill the envious moon. So now we have these antithetical ideas. The sun versus the moon. And the sun is going to kill the moon. So it clarifies his thoughts, right, by using this little piece of antithesis. There's another example that I want to show you just so you get clear on what antithesis can really do. It's also from Romeo and Juliet. Let's take a look at that piece of text. Okay, so in this case, Juliet has just found out, she's just found out that Romeo has killed her cousin, Tybalt, right? That's a bad day. So as she experiences this, she curses Romeo for killing her cousin. I mean, that's a bad thing to do. And just the moment after she curses Romeo for killing her cousin, she feels bad because she was cursing about the man she just married. Okay, so she's really conflicted, and there are a lot of opposing emotions happening, and she uses antithesis to try to sort them through. So here's the text, let's look at it, okay? Ah, poor my lord, what tongue shall smooth thy name? Okay, so she's talking about Romeo. Poor my lord, what tongue shall smooth thy name when I, thy 3-hour wives, have mangled it? Look for the antithesis there. I've kind of pointed it out with the way I read it. Okay, but we have, what tongue shall smooth thy name when I, thy wife, have mangled it? So we have an antithesis between smooth and mangled. Okay, in regards to Romeo's name. So somebody needs to smooth it out because she just mangled it. All right, so you see how that antithesis works there? Then we continue. But wherefore, villain, didst thou kill my cousin? That villain cousin would have killed my husband. Okay, there's some antithesis here. Now, it's not necessarily exactly opposite, but what Shakespeare is doing is setting up two ideas against each other. So here we see, but wherefore, villain, didst thou kill my cousin? So cousin is somebody that we usually feel warmly towards, and villain is somebody we don't feel warmly towards. Wherefore, villain, didst thou kill my cousin? Then she turns it on its head and says, that villain cousin, and we have another piece of opposition, another piece of antithesis, right? The villain cousin, they're right next to each other now. She's changed cousin to a villain. That villain cousin would have killed my husband. So now you have antithesis functioning sort of on multi-layers here. Kill my cousin versus killed my husband. You have villain versus cousin in two places. Once in that line, in the third line there, and once in the fourth line there, right? So villain versus cousin, and then kill my cousin versus killed my husband. And you have these two ideas that help her sort through, which side do I take? My cousin's side or my husband's side? And it's a really difficult decision for her to make. And you have to watch the play to see what happens when she does. The next piece of gravy that I want us to examine is repeated sounds and words. Okay, these are sounds like alliteration. I don't know if you know this term, but that means any words that start with the same letter. You know, T for two. There's two T's there, right? T for two. Right, you have that sound. And assonance, which means there are a lot of the same words with similar vowel sounds, okay? The other thing that Shakespeare does a lot is he repeats words, and we saw that in the past, in the census we just saw, that cousin villain sort of thing gets repeated. But I want to show you how he uses these repeated words to really clarify a piece of action and what a character might be doing. And we're going to use an example from The Taming of the Shrew. So let's look at that text. Okay, in this passage, Petruchio is, what's his action? He's trying to woo Kate, but Katerina, right? Catherine. Kate is really stubborn. She's a shrew. It's in the title of the play, Taming of the Shrew. But this is a great example. This is the first time they meet, and this is what he's trying to do to kind of disarm her and woo her and get through her obstinate nature. And he says, "Good morrow, Kate, for that's your name, I hear." Okay? And then we have a little wordplay, or what I like to call verbal ping pong, okay? Where she's going to take a word he just said and use it against him. Okay? So he says, "Good morrow, Kate, for that's your name, I hear." There's the first time we hear the word hear. And she says, "Well, have you heard, but somewhat hard of hearing, they call me Catherine, that do talk of me." Okay? So now we have that word here. It's repeated twice in those two lines, okay? And that's a little verbal ping pong. She takes that word here and says, "Ah, thank you," and she hits it right back to him to give him a little piece of her mind. So, "Good morrow, Kate, for that's your name, I hear. Well, have you heard, but something hard of hearing?" She uses that H sound, not only the word heard, but that H sound reappears several times. "Well, have you heard, but something hard of hearing?" That gives us a clue to what she's doing. I think she might be laughing at him. "You're such an idiot." "Well, have you heard, but something hard of hearing," okay? But then he's like, "No, you can't laugh at me because I've got something up my sleeve." This is where he's going to repeat a word. You'll see it. It's going to be fun, okay? "You lie, i'faith, for you are called plain Kate." Now look what he does with this word. "And bonny Kate, and sometimes Kate the cursed. But Kate, the prettiest Kate in Christendom, for dainties are all Kates, and therefore, Kate, take this of me, Kate, of my consolation, hearing thy mildest praise in every town, thy virtue spoke of, and thy beauty sounded. Yet not so deeply as to thee belongs, myself am moved to woo thee for my wife." Okay? He uses that word, Kate, a million times. Not only Kate, but the sound k, that Kate in Christendom, that sound k, called plain Kate, Kate the cursed, it comes up over and over and over again. To me, that sounds like he's practically spitting at her. K, k, k. Or maybe he's laughing too, but we can kind of see those repeated sounds and what they do to the language, and it makes it more fun. And you watch that word being morphed as you go through the text. Last thing I'll point out in this thing is he says, "Myself am moved to woo thee for my wife." He's using assonance very strongly there. We've got and a little alliteration. We have the M sound several times. We have to also have the oo sound. So it's kind of like he's like right? "Myself am moved to woo thee for my wife." All right? He's wooing her with that sound, and this is how she responds. She takes that word, it's a verbal ping pong, "moved in good time. Let him that moved you hither remove you hence." Okay, and she uses that sound and that word to fight right back at him. So it's this lively game of ping pong between them, and it's something really exciting. Okay, that's just a couple of examples of gravy that you can look. There are some other examples that things that you should look for. You should look for rhyme. You should look for onomatopoeia. You should look for jokes, malapropisms. That's when somebody uses a word wrong in an improper way. You should look for double entendre, meaning things that mean two different things. Shakespeare was a dirty bird. Lots of dirty double entendre you can find in his work. And all of these things kind of work together to really get the juices out of the language. So to review, the 5 keys are: follow the thought, follow the action, identify images, decipher the meter, and then look for the gravy. Squeeze that gravy out. Let the juices drip. And if you do those things, you'll be in a good position to really understand the richness of the language. And I think you'll find that you'll enjoy reading the language because of all the richness that you'll discover as you go through these 5 steps. And for dessert, I want to show you a clip from Taming of the Shrew, a clip of the same scene that we just examined. And you can see how the actors use this gravy and use these various rhetorical and poetic devices to enhance their performance.